I think we're live. We're gonna wait another 5 seconds
I
for
don't know,
just in case we're not live.
Some comment. People comment.
Are we live? Are we live?
Yeah. Can anybody hear us?
Exactly.
I don't see any comments.
Oh, just a second. Can you not see the comments? I can see the comment section,
I'm in the comments. I've got the comments thing open, and the last comment I can see is Gender Parity UK at 8:48. Welcome to the show. Can you see people saying, "Hey, I can hear you"?
Yeah, welcome to the show. Okay. Well, as far as I know, there's only one person watching at the moment, but I think we're still gonna start because they to MRAdio. My name is Philip Tanser. I'm the founder of Gender Parity UK, and my co-host is. Introduce yourself.
Elizabeth Hobson. I'm currently a trustee of Parity, and we are in conversation right now trying to work out when the best time for our AGM will be. We will have William Collins speaking to us. I'm not 100% sure if he has told us what he will be telling us about, but he is, as Mike Buchanan has it, the gold standard of research into gender politics issues and many issues actually at the moment. He does a lot of interesting investigations into lots of data because he knows numbers and stuff. So nice. That's exciting.
Okay. It's wonderful to have you with us. Elizabeth and we're gonna be the hosts of MRAdio, and on this show we're gonna talk about current issues affecting men and boys, especially in a legal and political way here in the UK. Maybe in the future we are even gonna touch on some things that are happening internationally. We will see. Tonight we want to look at three main topics. The first topic is that Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, has vowed to put education in place in schools to educate boys to be less toxically masculine and to cater more to the needs of women and girls. I'm being a bit facetious here, but we're going to look into that. We're also going to look into a new bill, a victims bill that is proposed in Scotland, and we're going to talk about the potential dangers of this bill. And at the end, we're also going to talk about the online harms bill in the UK and how lobby groups are lying about who are predominantly the victims of online abuse. Spoiler alert, it is men, not women. So, Elizabeth, are you ready to look into the first story?
Absolutely.
Okay, let me see if I can put it on screen. So, this is our first story. I'm gonna read it out for those who can't read the text on the screen. Labour considers plan to educate boys to curb violence against women. Keir Starmer says prevention is key to ending abuse during roundtable session with experts and celebrities. Labour is considering plans to roll out education for young boys on violence against women and girls, also called VOG, in an effort to tackle the epidemic. Do you also already want to say something about that, Elizabeth?
Well, I mean, to be honest, it seems like a strange platform to raise if actually you're concerned about the issues, because this has been going on in schools for years. Like in 2017, probably, maybe 2016, I was looking into a particular organisation whose name I've forgotten, but I did download some of their literature So I'd be able to find it with some diligence. But they had programs. They were going to they would speak to girls and boys separately in secondary schools, and essentially what they would teach them all, they taught them all a biased revisionist kind of history with, you know, all the ways in which women could be said to have been disadvantaged, and absolutely none of the ways in which men were disadvantaged, you know, certainly. And it was all, obviously it was presented as and you know, men really liked all these ways in which women were disadvantaged, and they didn't help at all in, you know, the struggle for liberation and all of this. You know, it was all women like fighting for their rights against these awful men. And then they would teach the girls not to take shit from the boys, and they would teach the boys to stop raping the girls. So that
I know,
been going on for a long time.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes. But I think the difference probably will be that this would be nationwide and probably integrated into the curriculum, where this other thing that you're talking about, and I know exactly what you're talking about, it was sponsored by an organization going into schools and training the girls to be empowered and the boys to apologize for being men.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, it says that, you know, that if they're rolling it out, then yeah, it is a more formal thing rather than random charities appealing to the ideologues at the schools to let them in, which they seem to have a lot of success with anyway.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, I think it is more that, I mean, I don't think it is indicative behavior of wanting to solve the problem. I mean, you know, if this is an epidemic, what he's suggesting, this education has been happening at a large scale, even if it hasn't been rolled out formally and nationally. And, you know, has it been helping? Would he say it's been helping? Because he would have to if he was justifying rolling it out.
I would actually say that this constant push against masculinity in boys is what makes Andrew Tate so successful, and they're obviously using the existence of Andrew Tate to push more and more of this. So it's this circle of saying, oh, there's more misogyny, but the misogyny, quote unquote, misogyny, is only there because they were pushing boys more and more to the outside of society and to the edge.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm gonna continue reading about this horrible epidemic. Keir Starmer.
That is the silver lining, actually. You know, and whilst Andrew Tate is not, you know, a paragon of virtue, I'm all right with young men engaging, you know, in his, like, watching his content. He comes up with some quite interesting points about various things, and I would think that young men engaging with his content would perhaps be a way to open their minds to some different ideas, get them thinking about various things. And yeah, I mean, anecdotally, and also I think there are surveys more and more coming out showing that, you know, boys are becoming increasingly aware of the anti-male bias across society, and very much skeptical of the, you know, poor women victim narrative that's been pushed to absurdity. Which, to be honest, is all right by me. But you know, I think that's really, you know, unfortunate thing. It's like the Labour Party was supposed to represent working class families, working class people, and you know, there is more violence there, and the major contributing factor is the breakdown of the family. And so if Keir Starmer wanted to end violence against women and girls, which would be a good thing to do if his, you know, demographic was working class people, then he would be promoting the role of fathers in their families. But, you know, that's not what he's doing, is it?
No. I'm going to continue reading for now. Keir Starmer believes prevention is extremely important and will play a crucial role in ensuring his party achieves its mission to halve violence against women and girls within a decade. The Labour Party leader acknowledged it would be a tough road in order to achieve his crime mission, but said we should begin a discussion enabling boys and young men to feel more comfortable calling violence against women and girls out when they see it. He spoke to more than a dozen experts, including Ruth Davidson, the chief executive of Refuge, Selma Taha, the executive director of Southall Black Sisters, and Harriet Wistridge, the director of the Center for Women's Justice. We will get back to the Center of Women's Justice later, who urged the Labour leader to focus on prevention, education of young men, and focus on rebuilding a victim-led justice system. The actor Emily... Pardon?
Can I jump in?
Yes, please do.
Speaking as a stunning and brave woman, I find it offensive that, like, you know, twice in that, like, what, 2 paragraphs, and I mean, the whole gist of the policy is like, we have to stop, you know, violence against women by getting boys to call it out when they see it and all this stuff. And it's like, what about us? Like, are we not agentic as women? Can we not tell boys or men, whatever age we are, when their behavior is not appropriate? You know, what happened to empowerment, female empowerment?
Sorry, Elizabeth. Sorry, Elizabeth. Did you not get the memo? Women can do whatever they want to do, whenever they want to do, but they can't have agency. Yeah, so the actor Emily Attack and the Love Island star Georgia Harrison, who also spoke at the event, praised Starmer for his mission and urged the party to ensure more professionals are able to educate young men in schools on different forms of abuse. We must look at toxic masculinity, which is a huge issue. Take the blame off the victims, stop the victim blaming, and actually focus on the perpetrators. Attack said, adding that she believed the best way to tackle this was to introduce more experts into the education system. Let me guess, these experts are radical feminists, of course. Teachers need to be very prepared to have these conversations, but I think sometimes teachers, find it very awkward to talk about these kinds of things with pupils because they may feel a bit out of their depth. So we need professionals to come in to talk about these specific things. Daniel Guinness, manager of the charity Beyond Equality, which works with men and... Say again?
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in about, you know, teachers feeling, what do they feel? Unconfident or something to talk about these things. Like, these are, I just don't think the sort of social elements are, I don't think schools should be teaching them. I think they're the responsibility of families, and I really resent the way the education system, you know, I mean, they're barely teaching kids to read and write anymore, but what they are teaching them is that there's no such thing as a man or a woman. There's no innate characteristics there. That's just an idea, man. You know, and yeah, just these sort of like mad social revisionist history theories that are not based in fact. And it's like, that is our job as parents, and we have values that we want to instill in our children, and they have no right to use taxpayers' money to force this stuff down our children's throats. They should be doing their job, educating them, teaching them, how to think critically.
Yeah, but it's very clear that I think it's very clear that especially politicians on the left view the job of teachers, be it environmentalism, feminism, race awareness. So at the moment, schools are indoctrination camps. And what frightens me is that they want to circumvent the teachers who are already very feminist leaning. I mean, most teachers are, politically speaking, on the left, and most young teachers for early education, well, for all levels of education, are women already, but that's not enough for them. They want experts, so people that are trained into feminist ideology to go into the schools and educate the children.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I think, to be honest, it's like it's another money-making industry. I just can't even believe that they think this is going to have any positive impact at all. And perhaps they kind of get off on the whole divide and conquer thing that they're doing to us, like between men and women. I guess it's kind of useful if you want to control the population. But, with regards to especially like left-leaning politicians being keen on this kind of approach, I have not seen a huge amount of pushback from right-leaning politicians, with a few notable exceptions like Kemi Badenoch. So where are they? Where are the conservatives?
The problem is that both the conservatives and the people on the left know that they need the female vote. The female vote is the strongest voting bloc, and obviously the Labour Party has annoyed quite a few women by not being able to identify what a woman is. And now Keir Starmer has to heal these wounds by virtue signaling to women. Funny enough, when you look on Twitter in the comment section, a lot of women say maybe you should first define what a woman is before you try to educate boys how to protect them. So that backfired in some regards.
You know what? That's a really good point. What exactly are we talking about? Maybe we should end violence against women and girls, and let's just get rid of like men as a category entirely. We'll all be women and girls and live peacefully and love each other. We'll be stunning and brave and empowered, and and you guys can take your 30% pay cuts.
Earlier,
tampons. You love it.
Earlier, when I read through the article, I mentioned that I will get back to one organization that was at the roundtable discussion, and that was the Center for Women's Justice. I would like to share their website. So this is the website of the Center for Women's Justice, and when we look at their manifesto and scroll down, when I heard the name, I thought, wait a second, I heard of them before. And I found it. I clicked on this point: end unjust criminalization of victims of abuse. Now, again, end unjust criminalization of victims of abuse. Gonna click on that. And here in the middle, this is why I know the Center of Women's Justice. Earlier this year, the Center of Women's Justice published our report, Women Who Kill: How the State Criminalizes Women We Might Otherwise Be Burying. So this organization, the Center for Women's Justice, they actually have a very strong focus on advocating and protecting women that killed their partners in cold blood in instances of domestic abuse, because unfortunately it's not enough for these domestic abuse sectors that that 99% of the funding goes to female victims and practically no funding goes to male victims. No, they also have to decriminalize all female perpetrators, including the ones that killed their partners. And they are one of.
I'm a little bit confused. Like, are they really assuming the gender of these murder victims? How do they know? Perhaps they're actually dead women, and we need to start a campaign to get justice for them.
No, most of the victims actually had their pronoun badges.
They've got their pronouns on their gravestones.
Exactly. Yeah, but these are the organizations that inform Keir Starmer on this project. Another group that was mentioned was Southall Black Sisters, and I recognize them because they were one of the organizations that were very involved in informing the new domestic abuse bill. And Jess Phillips, MP Jess Phillips, pretty sure she was it who invited all the speakers to the who gave evidence. And of course it was only Refuge, Women's Aid, and one of them was Southall Black Sisters. And they were all pushing into the exact same direction, and it was pretty much giving free asylum to migrant women, to asylum-seeking women. So if that was their focus, and if I had continued reading the article about Keir Starmer, down at the end it says, and we need a new focus on migrant women that experience domestic abuse. So they just want to open the floodgates for. Apparently we're frozen.
Everybody frozen. Or just one of us?
I think just me. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. I hope we're back. Stephen, are we back?
Hi, Stephen. Been a while.
I hope we're back. I don't
think we're back because all I see is still you are frozen.
Okay.
It's kind of having the comments here, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I hope people can hear us again. Just a second. Let's ask. Can you hear us again? Question mark. Well, I'm just going to continue till I get a reply. Yeah. So for some reason, it seems there's a strong push from the domestic abuse lobby and from Labour to open immigration to any woman that claims she has experienced domestic abuse. I think that's the next step. And that actually works together with the so-called Istanbul Convention, an international convention to tackle domestic abuse. And they actually say every woman that claims domestic abuse should immediately get migration, like residential status in any country. So, is there anything else that you want to say about the Keir Starmer re-educating our boys?
So no, not really. I think that's about it. The Centre for Women's Justice, do they actually get involved in those cases then? Do you know? Or are they just lobbying? They
have legal advisors in their team. So I think they do have barristers, feminist barristers and lawyers in there that help women to get out of that. I looked into the Center of Women's Justice back when they released the report, and I looked into some of these lawyers, and they were campaigning, and I think they were also part of some legal cases where they got women out of prison or tried to get women out of prison.
Yeah, because when we were talking before the show, I mistook them for some women that I'd met actually at a feminist conference, but it transpired that they were, what are they called? I told you. Justice for women. Justice for women. But yeah, they involve themselves in cases. They were involved in getting Sally Challoner. Is that her name? Challoner.
Challen. Sally Challen.
Yeah. Sally Challen off from. What did she?
Killing her,
like manslaughter or something.
Yes, so she killed her husband with, I think, 28 blows to the head with a hammer that she brought to a date in her handbag after they had separated, and they reduced it from murder to manslaughter. I mean, how much more murderous can it be?
Yeah, exactly. It's quite absurd. And you know what? There was something else I wanted to mention, and it came to me twice, but it's gone again. It's gone. Let's move on.
Okay, let's jump into the next topic. And the next topic is a new proposed bill in Scotland, and I read from Sky News. Scotland's not proven verdict to be scrapped as justice system reforms revealed. The bill to scrap Scotland's controversial not proven verdict and make changes to the nation's justice system has been published. The Victims, Witnesses and Justice Reform Bill also proposes. It aims to address a number of issues around serious sexual offences, creating a new specialist sexual offence court. Ministers will also have the power to carry out a pilot of rape trials being inducted by a single judge without a jury. For jury trials, the majority needed for a guilty verdict will be at least 2/3. Guilty, not guilty, and not proven are 3 verdicts which can be returned in Scotland. Last year, the then First Minister Nicola Sturgeon committed to abolishing the 3rd verdict in the Scottish legal system. The not proven verdict is unique to Scots law, and there is because the accused is deemed innocent in the eyes of the law. Have also argued that the verdict fails to provide closure for victims. Justice Secretary Angela Constance said, "This landmark legislation is among the most significant since evolution and will ensure fairness in the system. Building on the experiences of survivors, victims, and their families, these key reforms will make justice services more sensitive to the trauma it can cause." I'm going to stop here and actually gonna open the website of the government. Just a second. Oh, I didn't share it. I'm so sorry. I thought I actually shared the article. Oh, I'm going to share the government website now. So this is just the short overview of the Victims and Witnesses Commissioner for Scotland. What are your thoughts on that, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I had no idea that there was a not proven verdict possible in Scotland. That's stupid. Get rid of that. You're guilty or you're not guilty. That is proper. Getting rid of juries, like, that's not proper. That's not how we do it at all.
We'll just a second. We'll go through all of that. So let's go through it bit by bit. So the first part creates the Office of the Victims and Witnesses Commissioner for Scotland.
What's the role of the Victims and Witness Commissioner?
Well, we have a Victims Commissioner in the UK. Actually, we have one for London and we have one for the rest of the UK, or the rest of England and Wales. And I can tell you, they are trained feminists and they come with a women's aid background. And so all the commissioners obviously are women. They have been. There has never been a male victims or domestic abuse commissioner, and they are all trained by Women's Aid or Refuge.
Does it have in this document like what they're responsible for in more detail?
Yes, yes. I actually shared the link to the document in the detail section. So under the video, you can find the.
Oh, I'm not going there. That'll cause
No.
It'll be like parallel universe kind of.
Oh, it's too much. Yeah, it's too much. But you can have a look at it afterwards. But it's 63 pages, so it's quite a lot. But they have quite a lot of power communicating with the First Minister, with all MSPs, influencing public discourse, talking to judges, as far as I know. So they are quite important. And
yeah, and I mean, to be honest, it does just suggest inherently, by virtue of having that, it's like, what about people who are brought into court because someone alleges a crime against them? You know, it says the victims and witnesses. Because obviously they're going to be helping, you know, or they're representing people who are going to court with these issues. And it's like, well, some of them are not victims. Some of them are malicious or lying, attention seeking, whatever, you know. And bearing that in mind, you need a justice commissioner to look after everybody who is involved in these processes, and also the law itself, as the basis of a stable society. Oh, it's my buddies. Oh, here we go. They're going to have a mad off hour.
As soon as you make the justice system victim focused, it's not a justice system anymore. It's a victim system. And one of our guys from Gender Parity UK just sent a letter to the Ministry of Justice, and to the Home Office, because they keep releasing documents talking about victims, but it's very clear that they're not talking about victims, they're talking about accusers, but the two terms are constantly being conflated. And I think that's going to be exactly the same here. The Victims Commissioner of the UK, for example, has so far completely ignored victims of false allegations, even in the most egregious situations. She has never taken their side, and obviously they have never really taken the side of male victims of abuse either.
No, and you know, apart from, like, you know, going back to this whole like Keir Starmer thing, you know, and you mentioned, well, he's pandering to the women's vote, but I'd be really interested to see. I've never seen any solid sort of research on how many women want this kind of anti-male bias throughout the system, because so many of us are married, do have sons, do love our fathers, have brothers, have friends who we don't want to see being disadvantaged or abused systematically. And so, yeah, I do wonder. I would really like to see actually how successful these measures are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, perhaps it's like, it's not so much, because I mean, these politicians are all so out of touch. I'm sure it goes across really well at their dinner parties in Hampstead with their, like, you know, to associate, but does it go down well with average women who have real lives? I don't know.
I think the question is how you actually ask something like that. If you ask, do you think women should get more protection, most people will say yes. If you say, do you think that the justice system should be fair, or do you think that all victims of abuse deserve equal protection, people would say yes to that. It's always a question of how you phrase it, and if you actually give them the option. If you ask, would you prefer a justice system that prefers women, or would you prefer a justice system that applies the law equally? I think almost everybody will say, I want an equal law, but that's not how they ask. That's not how they promote it.
That kind of psychological, just like leaning, is even in, you know, that title for that role, isn't it? The victims commissioner. It's like, that's not what you mean, is it?
Yeah, exactly. So let's look at part number 2. Embeds trauma-informed practice in criminal and civil courts.
Yeah, I mean, that's a sort of sounds fairly could be appropriate, but we know that it's going to be used to justify.
I think to use Rick Bradford's term, I think it's a weasel word, and I think what they mean is, for example, that accusers of sexual violence and domestic abuse don't have to show up in court, and they because it's trauma informed, they can't be challenged, they can't be asked, they just write a written statement, and that statement can obviously be co-authored by organizations like Women's Aid or by their lawyer, and they can't be scrutinized, and all of that under the pretense, well, I just can't look my perpetrator in the eye, it re-traumatizes me too much. So I think that's what it's going to be, because we already have that in the domestic abuse bill in the UK.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're entirely correct.
Yeah. Earlier on, I told you about this girl, Ellie Wilson, who is a rape victim. Like, the perpetrator has been found guilty. I don't know. I feel a bit weird about the case, but when I read one of the articles about her, it said the judge said, I read her trauma statement, and it's horrible what she went through. She tried to commit suicide, and I was just thinking to myself, you read her statement, you didn't listen to her? Did you ever meet the so-called victim? Did you ever scrutinize her, or did she just write a victim statement? And I think she just wrote a victim statement. If that is the case, I find that shocking.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Always part of trials, whether or not people are there in person. So could go either way. I don't think it's definitive evidence that she wasn't.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So part 3 increases the availability of special measures from vulnerable witnesses and parties in civil court proceedings. To be honest, I think that's pretty much the same thing as above. So it gives them more rights and more protections.
Yeah. You know, but the other thing that I have a problem with here, I mean, just civil courts generally, they are way overstepping their remit. You know, to me, you know, civil courts would be a useful thing for us to have, and they would be useful when someone doesn't pay a tradesman 500 quid. You know, they're being used in these cases where there are criminal allegations being made, and I think that's entirely inappropriate. And if they're suggesting that in civil courts we have witnesses that are vulnerable to some kind of harm as a result of being engaged in the proceeding, then they shouldn't be in civil courts.
That's
and actually, I think
point.
the reason that they're in civil courts is because there is not the proper standard of evidence required there. It's the preponderance of evidence, which is not sufficient to, you know, make judgments on criminal liability.
Yes. So every for example, every family court case where there is a claim of domestic abuse, which is criminal, should immediately go to the criminal court and be moved away from the civil court, I think.
Absolutely. You know, at least the domestic violence element needs to be dealt with there. And if someone's found guilty, then raise it in the family court. You know, look, they've got this conviction. And if they're found not guilty, then you just can't mention it in the family court because it's not proven.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, part number 4 changes the size of the criminal jury from 15 to 12. Makes rules about majority verdicts and what happens when a juror is dismissed or unable to continue on the jury. So instead of 50%, or simple majority, they change to 2/3. 2/3 have to agree with the verdict. And then the last point removes the not proven verdict. I actually agree with all of these points. I think that's fine.
What, 2/3 rather than a majority? And this is in criminal cases?
Yes. I think that makes it harder for somebody to be convicted, does it not? Or do I read that wrong?
Oh, right. No, sorry, 2/3 rather than a simple majority. Okay, yeah. See, I thought it was like more that was required. I thought it was like unanimous was required.
No, it was. I think it was simple majority in Scotland, if I'm not mistaken. If somebody can correct me, please correct me. But I think it was a simple majority. And in the article, it actually said that the 2/3 majority obviously makes it fairer for the accused, which is absolutely correct. And I'm surprised that this is being introduced by the SNP. And actually, some of the articles that I found, the articles tried to make it sound as if it was good for women and for rape victims. They also said that, for example, removing the not proven verdict. So that's something that's only in Scotland. In the UK, you have guilty and not guilty. And in Scotland, you have not proven. And the article said that removing the not proven verdict actually makes it easier for the victim to come to terms. But imagine you actually have been raped, and then your perpetrator gets a not proven verdict, then you're like, to me that would feel better than if you would get a not guilty verdict. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, yes, I would think so. But I mean, I don't know, perhaps it's like to make the accusers who get a not guilty verdict feel better because, well, you know, if you get a not guilty verdict when the not proven one is on the table, then that is really like you are a bad liar, proper bad liar, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, I mean, that is stupid, unnecessary, ridiculous. I can't believe you ever had that, man. You're crazy.
Yeah. But to be honest, I think all these points in part 4 are actually good for the accused. So I think that's very positive.
The way you express them, it sounds good to me. I will go with part 4.
Maybe there are loopholes that I'm not aware of, but yeah, so far it sounds good.
Yeah, and I'm just going on what you're saying about it, man. But what you say is true.
Full disclosure, I have not read the bill yet. I've got a guy. He always sends me stuff about bills in Scotland, and he constantly goes through everything that is being said in the government. Unfortunately, he's very secretive. Otherwise, he would be an amazing men's rights activist, like public men's rights activist, because he's very legally minded, which I am not. So I'm waiting for his assessment. So part 5 creates a new sexual offences court and sets out how it will operate within the criminal justice system.
I mean, what is the, well, yeah, I don't know if you have sort of read about what the justification for that is.
Well, at the moment, sexual offense cases, it takes very, very long for them to actually go to court. So a separate court would speed up the process, I assume. But I think the real reason for the feminist lobby groups is that it's a court that can be trained in feminist ideology and with a quote unquote victim focus. So
yeah,
that would be my fear.
Yeah, I mean, and I think
it's the same. The fact that they want to. Oh, no, you continue.
I was just going to say, in addition, I feel like when institutions are founded, they have a tendency to grow. Those people all want to justify their own jobs, make sure that they keep them, try and justify higher wages, try to build on, what they have made. And so I would fear that they would start taking on more and more ludicrous cases, covering a ridiculous definition of sexual offences. I would expect that, because if they've got they're only doing sexual offences, and as we know, it's hard to find the sort of, guilt in these cases because so many of them happen when there's only the alleged victim and the alleged perpetrator in attendance. And so, their stats would look appalling if they were doing their job properly. And so I think they would be tempted to try and improve their figures for convictions. And also, it's like, I do understand that if judges are only seeing, if a judge has never come across a case like this before, they're not experienced and they're not quite sure what to do with it, and that's a problem. However, I also kind of think that there is a value in a judge seeing a variety of cases, and so they have a more balanced view of the world and people in it and how people operate and what people do. And so I'm not for 0.5.
I agree. I think that's very dangerous. I think it's going to be another monster that feeds itself, just like the family court system. Part 6 provides automatic lifelong anonymity for victims of sexual offenses. Gives complainers in sexual offense cases an automatic right to independent legal representation when an application is made to introduce evidence about the complainer's character. I will explain that. And the last one gives power to the Scottish ministers to carry out a pilot of rape trials conducted by a single judge. So the first one, lifelong anonymity. Again, if it's anonymity for the victim, I'm actually okay with it. But if it's lifelong anonymity for the accuser, then I'm absolutely not okay with it, because at what point does the accuser become the perpetrator if there are proven cases of false allegations, or when the so-called perpetrator is found not guilty? Is there still anonymity?
Quite.
And what if one person, for example, keeps making allegations, but because they have anonymity, it never comes out that they have made allegations before that were proven to be false?
Yeah. And, I can see the kind of, there is, a justification that it's a taboo and there's all this shame involved. If that is the case, and it is the case, but if it is the case that our response to that should be anonymity, then it needs to be for everyone involved, at least until conviction. And to be honest, I mean, I'm not convinced that that is a progressive move. You know, I think it would be better to say, look, there's no shame. You are a victim of crime, like any other victim of crime who doesn't need to be ashamed that they've been victimized. So, you know, it's shitty, but you'll have to deal with it. But the other thing is that, you know, when you raise the point that, well, you should have anonymity for everyone if it's so shameful, you know, people, yeah, as you say, you know, people say about the accused that, well, there might be like all these other victims who can come forward if they see that they're in court. And so, yeah, the exact same thing goes, you know, and it's not just that someone might have made many false allegations. It's like, well, maybe there's someone out there who's like, but I saw her or him indeed in the pub that night being fine at the time they say they were being victimized. So, yeah, I would generally be in favor of providing zero anonymity for anyone ever, apart from children.
Yes, I think that the accused also needs anonymity until the point that he's proven to be guilty, because so many people are already like victimized, threatened. You probably know this case where this crazy girl in England has punched herself with a hammer in the face and claimed that several guys have raped her. It was the grooming. She claimed that she was groomed by Pakistani man, and she harmed herself. But she was proven to be a false accuser, and she rots in jail now, luckily. But yeah, one of them, and I think two of them men were already in prison, and they received obviously death threats. One of them, I think, lost his family because of that, because of these false allegations, and because they did not have anonymity. So yeah, I think we need anonymity for both parties until there's a verdict. Are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean,
it's a tricky one, isn't it?
I very much see that. And yeah, how about like I don't know, because there is like a value in people could become aware that the case was going when they have information, that is pertinent to the case. I don't know. But certainly one-sided is just inappropriate, 100%. It's one way or the other.
I agree. So last 2 points. Gives complainers in sexual offense cases an automatic right to independent legal representation when an application is made to introduce evidence about the complainer's character. That sounds very complicated. What it really means is when the accused or the legal representation of the accused says, we want to see the phone records, we want to see social media posts, and we want information published about the sexual behavior of the victim prior to what happened. If the lawyer of the accused asks for that, then the accuser.
They already have it because they want to introduce it. They have the evidence. They want to introduce it to the court.
Yes. Exactly.
It's not like
they want. Yes, they want to introduce it. Thank you. Exactly that. They want to introduce it, and if that is the case, then the quote-unquote victim gets free legal representation from the government.
Yeah.
So
I mean, clearly designed as a chilling mechanism,
and just putting
any exoner or any evidence that suggests that the veracity of these claims may not bear scrutiny.
Yes, and it's just putting the finger a little bit on Lady Justice's scale, just a tad more.
Finger.
Yeah, and now the last thing, gives power to the Scottish ministers to carry out a pilot of rape trials conducted by a single judge. So getting rid of the jury.
Right. Wow. That is so troubling. That is so troubling, and it's so sad, and it is just, I feel at the moment a deep loss for the kind of legacy of our civilization and what a wonderful thing was built, and how we are just being terrible iconoclasts, tearing it all down. And that is very much emblematic of it. That's, you know, that we're judged by our peers. That is how we do it. That is our foundational values.
Yeah. And in Scotland, they, in the universities where they teach legal, how is it called? Where lawyers and judges are trained. How do you call?
I don't know. I don't know. What do they do?
Well, they study law. I assume they study law.
Yeah, I suppose they study.
Sorry, my excuse is I'm German. I'm German. I'm German. So something. So, but in Scotland, they actually have a feminist law in the universities. So they are trained in feminist law. That
God,
is like
no.
Yeah. No, they have it.
100%. Lord Jesus Christ, no.
Yes. Yeah. And there is actually an international group of feminist lawyers and judges that push feminist law and feminist interpretation of law more and more into the justice system.
I mean, like, I know, obviously, we all know that it happens. We see it. But, like, the fact that it can be people can explicitly train in feminist law and then go into, like, you know, a British court of law, and they are not qualified in British law, they're qualified in feminist law. Like, that's an ideology. That's different. There's a different weight in there, and it's just awful. Oh, I feel sick.
Unfortunately, I mean, I don't know how involved you still are recently with men's rights. If you constantly keep reading the stuff, I feel so disheartened on a constant basis, because there's new, excuse my language, I think we can swear once in a live stream. I feel there's so much shit coming out every single day, and it's like a tsunami of hate towards men and boys. And I mean, we are doing our job, but we don't have a lobby, we don't have the money, and the only thing that we can hope for is that the tide is breaking at one point before society is breaking, because I think that's, unfortunately, that is coming.
Yeah. So I have been out of the scene for a while because my work schedule was so intensely heavy. But I have started a new job the Monday before last, which is like 9 to 5, and
Nice.
Monday to Friday. So yeah, I'm getting back into things. In terms of, no, I'm not as up to date as I used to be, and particularly not on men's rights issues generally, or specifically. Although I do still take an interest, I am taking a broader interest in the way that the entire civilization is collapsing. Yeah.
Same here.
And I mean, on one hand, it feels like sometimes I feel like they are overplaying their hand in so many ways, and people are waking up, and people are waking up, and the conversation is changing. Tucker Carlson at that Heritage Foundation speech the other day described the realization that where 10 or 15 years ago it felt like we were playing this game, this human game, and we were discussing like policy issues, and it was like a normal progressive conversation that we would try to compromise and find a way forwards together. And now the board has been flipped, and it's like it's good and evil. It's a battle between good and evil, and the questions that we're discussing are not like we don't have the same aim, but we're not, with slight differences on how we think we'll best get there. Like the aims are completely different, and one way leads to hell and one way doesn't.
With that being said, because we reached the hour, and I would like to bring it to close after an hour, if that's okay for you. And I think what you just said is beautiful. Now, I would actually like to say a prayer. Now, I assume that some or many of our viewers are atheists, and so I would say goodbye to the ones that don't want to be part of the prayer. Elizabeth, is it okay for you if I pray?
Yeah, I have taken up that practice myself recently.
Okay, so Heavenly Father, this does feel like a fight, good versus evil, and we ask you to guide us on the right way. We ask you to open our eyes for those who might be misguided but have a good heart and just need to be taken into the right direction, and tell them apart from those who actively fight for the forces of evil. May you help us in the fight against those, and may you help us reach those who can still be saved. Please strengthen our hearts, strengthen our back, and may you guide this civilization back to more stability, more love towards you, more love towards family, and our traditions. Anything you would like to add, Elizabeth?
I would like to express my gratitude to God for reaching an increasing number of people, and helping to guide us, and ask that He continue in His marvelous and creative way to find ways into our hearts to bring us the clarity and the courage that we need.
Okay. It is in your name, Heavenly Father, that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I'm very much looking forward to next week. The last topic that we didn't get to today, we're gonna pick up next week. And I really like the fact that you're a little bit out of the whole men's rights thing, because you're coming to it with fresh eyes, and you're being introduced to all this crazy nonsense that's happening, and I really enjoy it. Thank you so much for the people watching this live stream and this podcast tonight and in the future. Please share it, like it, follow us on Twitter. I'm Philip Tensor 1 on Twitter. Elizabeth, what's your handle on Twitter?
I would be at anti _fembot FEMBOT.
And you can also find us on Twitter as MRAdio UK. Thank you for joining in, and see you next week. God bless.
Cool. Oh, we're still live.